Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
This is actually a show that we tried to produce 3 different times. The first time, we had video connectivity issues. The second time was the big Instagram, Facebook blackout. So it looks like this is the third time, which is always the charm. And we're going to be talking about something really exciting. Anytime Joel Greene comes on the show, we talk about stuff that you're not going to hear about anywhere else. And it's not because he tries to be controversial. But when Joel starts digging into the science, he finds all the things that everybody else missed. Because Joel is not a proponent of baby talk. We already have comments coming up. So this is what I wrote for Facebook today. Is fasting making you fat and insulin resistant? I said, I started fasting in 2007 after an interview with Dr. Mark McCarty, who's from UC Davis, I believe, who published the first study on rats using the every other day diet protocol. The protocol showed that periodic fasting elevated a variety of markers associated with improved aging and health. We've continued to discuss fasting on this show ever since, but something has changed. Like most things, we believe if a little is good, a lot is better. And there's a thin line between the hormetic effects of intermittent fasting and the biological perturbations of starvation. If you're someone who has tried fasting and it failed for you, you may learn why on today's show. If you're someone who's just getting into fasting, we're going to teach you how to avoid the pitfalls. And of course, someone posted on the comments, obviously not, meaning that obviously not fasting could lead to body fat retention and maybe even accumulation and insulin resistance. And this is where Joel's brilliance comes in, when he resists just talking in baby talk in order to reach the largest number of people. Everything, when it comes to the human body, everything is more complex than just one thing. And if you really believe that just one thing is the reason for this or the reason for that, you're insulting the complexity of the human body, and you're never going to learn anything. So we're going to dig into fasting today, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there is some ugly. Before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. Legendary Foods specializes in snacks that taste like snacks but have little to no sugar, like their Tasty Pastry, which was designed to give us a healthy alternative to the Pop-Tart and ended up being so much more. Tasty Pastries taste like real cake. In fact, you will eat them because they're delicious. And the byproduct of getting 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar is just that. It's a byproduct. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10, you can save 10% off everything at Legendary Foods. And if you listen for the secret word during the commercial break, write the secret word down in an email, send it to onair@superhumanradio.net, include your mailing address, and we will send you a care package that will knock you out. If you don't put your address in there, I am not going to email you and ask you for it. It just means you can't follow direction. But if you put your address in there, thanks to the generosity of Ron Penna, you'll get a goodie box. Here's Joe Nasrallah. He says, "Are you effing kidding me? I was expecting a box of Tasty Pastries, but what I got was amazing. Beyond ecstatic. Thank you to Ron for his generosity." And then I love this one. This is Lucy and Izzy unboxing our free tasty pastries. Everyone has been enjoying them. Breakfast has been healthier, easier, and the kids think they are suddenly getting the same junk food that their friends do. Thank you. Your kids will love these, and I promise you, you'll have a hard time keeping them in stock in your pantry. So check it out, shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10, save 10% off. And now, without further delay, my brother from another mother. Let me get the imagery up here. Joel Greene, how you doing?
Hey, man, I'm good. Good to be back on the show.
Yeah, without anybody interrupting the show with something, right?
No,
I was frustrated. We've tried to produce this show. This is the third time, and we get it on, so that's great. And please, I promise everybody, I will get to everybody's questions during the show, so just be patient. So, Joel, everybody thinks that, like this one comment, and I don't know if I can find it, but this one commenter said, obviously, intermittent fasting does not cause insulin resistance or accumulation of body fat. Is that just an example of baby talk?
Yeah. I mean, first question I would say to someone like that, or someone who says that, is, well, how long have you been doing it? How long have you been doing it? But part of the problem, I think, that we have today is you have a lot of proponents of fasting. First of all, high level, I'm not anti-fasting. My experience with fasting goes back to the 90s and what you would call time-restricted feeding and fasting. And it was when Met-Rx came out, and I was just kind of doing one meal a day because that's what Jeff Everson said to do. And I got peeled to the bone. I mean, I was lean, like ripped, and I was ripped for 5 years. Okay, like a long time. And then I started to have a lot of problems, a lot of issues related to like what I now know would be upregulation of food reward, upregulation of leptin, a lot of issues. And so I kind of had an experience that after about 5 years, like things started to work differently than they did initially. And that has been my experience with the human body in general, is that generally speaking, I actually did a post on Instagram a few weeks ago, and I just showed a sine wave. And I said, this is kind of true of everything.
Right.
Just about everything that you throw at the body, you'll see this curve over time. So, and then right about 2011, I kind of, got back into it, mainly for training purposes. I really wanted to, see what it was like training. And I was really into like AMK and the CERT1, sirtuins back then. And so I even created a PDF I showed to Ron Penna at Quest about 2013, I think, talking about what I called CERT training. And it was really training fasted and all that. And what I found over time, so at first it was fantastic and I was getting blasted doing it. And then what I found over time was I wasn't recovering. I was just chronically sore. And so a lot of what I'm saying comes out of three things. One, doing it for a long, long time. Two, since I've been on that train of kind of saying that, fasting has a lot of benefits, no question, but there can be some negatives. And since I've been on that train, going back to about 2012, people have come to me and said, oh my God. In fact, I did a post on Instagram prior to this show because I figured we'd get a lot of really good comments, and yeah, we did. So here's some of the comments I got talking about this topic. And so this is number two. This is other people, anecdotal reports have come to me saying the same thing. So here's one. Oh my God, I think this is exactly what happened to me. Another one here. Interesting to know your experience. I had a very similar one. I thought I had found the holy grail back then, but then I paid the price with insulin resistance and hypothyroidism. Another one here. I did TRF every day for a few years, and then performance went to hell over the course of about 6 months. Still unpacking the pieces from that. Balance in everything, I guess. So, and to be fair, that's not all the comments. Other comments were like, well, I've done it for 30 years and never had an issue. Heard that one too, which, that's to be expected. So nothing's ever black or white. So that's that. Third is mechanistically, and this is where it really gets interesting. Let's take the yin and the yang. On this side of the equation over here, we have insulin. On this side, we have glucagon. Okay. This one is the wango to this one's tango. Okay. They exist together. They work together. So one of them clears glucose, one of them raises glucose in the serum. Okay. Let's just take the insulin side of the equation and just take what we know right now. So on the insulin side of the equation, what we already know that nobody's going to debate is that there's this thing called attenuation, that insulin's good. There's no question. You have to have insulin. If you don't have it, you get this thing called diabetes, or if you have too much of it, you have what's called hyperinsulinemia, and you'll get diabetes from that too. So insulin is good. Not enough of it is bad, and too much of it can cause attenuation, meaning if we wanted to break those mechanisms down, that there's a thing that stimulates the production of insulin. For lack of a better word, let's just call that the fed state. Okay. So in the fed state, the body makes insulin. And then if you look at the daisy chain of events, you can break the fed state. You can break insulin's receptivity in the fed state by too much of certain things. Typically, we think of those things as sugar and carbohydrates, right?
Right.
So what happens is you break the receptor's sensitivity. So the IRS1 receptor, you take in too many carbs, too much sugar, a lot of different mechanisms going on. One of them would be you make lipopolysaccharide, gets in the serum, triggers tumor necrosis factor alpha, and that breaks insulin receptor substrate 1. Okay, and when that breaks, or when you lose your sensitivity there, the whole daisy chain, AKT, PIK3, all the way up to the GLUT4 proteins, doesn't work the same anymore. And then what happens? You need more insulin to get the same job done.
Right.
And then that daisy chains. So everybody gets that on the yin side of the equation. Sorry, home studio here. Everybody gets that on the insulin side of the equation, there's a thing called attenuation, that the receptor doesn't work in a straight line. It doesn't work like that. It works on the curve. It works on a logarithmic curve, and that too much of the antecedent that drives insulin production can break its sensitivity. Well, everybody gets that, right?
Now, from an evolutionary perspective, can you see why that's an important response?
Yeah. So basically,
I mean, if insulin's job is to shuttle things into cells, into tissue, right? That's what it is, glucose. But it has effects on other things too, right? There's some other things that insulin can shuttle. And if you are somebody who is starving, right, then insulin sensitivity should go up theoretically, because every meal you have most likely needs to be distributed into tissue and hopefully fat, because you're starving. So the body likes to make fat when it's starving because fat is storable. You can break it down later and use it. We can't do that with protein and sugar to a great degree. So this fluctuation with insulin sensitivity when you're starving is obvious, but we have never experienced in our evolutionary journey an overabundance of food. So there's never been a stop on the other end to say, oh, we're getting so much food, we need to regulate insulin sensitivity in the other direction. Dr. Scott Connolly was the first person to talk about that on my show years ago. So that's where glucagon comes in, right? Glucagon comes in because it's designed to help. Doesn't glucagon also affect insulin sensitivity, insulin receptor sensitivity?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the other side of the equation. So glucagon is the opposing hormone to insulin, and we need it. It's essential. Like when you are not in the fed state, let's call it the starved state. Okay, when you're in the starved state, so glucagon goes up, and that's how you stay alive. You know, that's how you keep glucose up. Glucagon's job is to get glucose up in the serum. Okay. So here's where we're at today. Here's the state of, quote, the art. The state of the art is that this side of the equation over here, yeah, of course you have that curve, of course, okay? This side of the equation over here, no, it's all good. No, it's nothing but good. You can't, there's nothing bad that comes from that side of the equation. That is absolutely 100% not how things work. It's not how
Baby
things
talk.
work.
That's baby talk.
When you break it down, so first of all, when you're fasting, you're going to elevate glucagon. That's good. That's good in the short term for sure, because that leads to fat oxidation, leads to a lot of things, a lot of benefits and improvements you see. However, fasting is a word, and that word represents really what we call starvation. Starvation is inherently stressful. It's inherently stressful on the body, particularly prolonged starvation. So the question becomes, over long periods, is it possible to see similar things happen to glucagon that we see happen to insulin? Is that possible? Can we see attenuation? Can we see elevated levels of that in response to stimuli? And the answer to that, drum roll, yes, absolutely. It's well documented. So first of all, prolonged starvation is a known stimulator of hyperglucagonemia, okay?
Right.
In other words, elevated serum glucagon. So what does hyperglucagonemia do? It gives you insulin resistance, okay? All I did was I just changed the word. I stopped using the word fasting. I used the word starvation. So that's a known commodity.
Right.
And there are a number of factors that can contribute long-term to elevated serum glucagon, okay? Now, if we just look at how things actually work, and we get out of this fantasy bubble that glucagon exists in this impregnable world where it always works the same, it never changes, it just works in a straight line. So no matter what the stimulus, it always works the same, okay? If you want to talk about a form of baby talk, that's it right there. Because no, that's not how it works. Absolutely does not work that way, okay?
Right.
And there's a lot of evidence showing that different stimuli over time can perturb glucagon sensitivity, okay? Both in the alpha islets and then also sort of at the receptor level. So there is evidentially good theoretical framework to understand that over time, you can see similar things to glucagon that you see on the insulin side of the equation.
Right.
Too much of the fed state, you break insulin. Too much of the starved state, you can break glucagon. So as a theoretical framework, that's on very, very solid ground, okay, to get that.
Right.
Now, we have to add in a couple of other factors there. One is cortisol, the other is growth hormone, okay? So the question is, can growth hormone induce insulin resistance? Can it?
Well, if there's a high conversion to IGF-1, I would imagine it could.
Yeah, it certainly can. And the next question is, can cortisol induce insulin resistance? The answer to that is, yeah, absolutely it can. So when you're in a fasted state, do you elevate over time? Do you elevate cortisol?
Especially if you're somebody who says lots of coffee is beneficial to fasting, because now you're like driving cortisol through the roof at the same time. A lot of people who fast drink a lot of coffee.
Oh my gosh, you're going to get Asprey on the phone here in about the next one.
I don't care about him. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just laying out a theoretical framework here mechanistically. So mechanistically, we have three big players here. We have growth hormone, which is elevated during fasting. We have cortisol, we have glucagon. So in terms of the ingredients in the soup, you certainly have the potential over time to disrupt insulin function. Now, there are studies showing that after a 3-day fast, you have physiologic insulin resistance. Okay, so if you fast 3 days, then you go back to eating.
Think about that. To all these people out there who are like promoting these long-term fasts regularly, like, oh, once a month you should fast for 4 days or 5 days. Think about this for a second. If your goal is to increase insulin sensitivity, which can happen during short fasts, personally, I like a 12-hour fast. That's all I do now. I stop eating at 6 p.m. I start eating at 6 a.m. the next morning. Boom. But think about this. The idiocy is now longer and longer fasts.
So here's the thing. Just coming back to this again. So coming back to this.
Okay.
This is pretty much true of anything that you throw at the body. Okay, like let's start with SSRIs. This is exactly how they work. Okay, so in the short term, you're like, this is awesome. I need more. Oh my God. But wait, I need more. I need more. What's not working? What's going on?
Everything works that way. Anabolic steroids, growth hormone, everything works that way.
Every single thing you throw at the body works like that. So if you want to take the position, not fasting, fasting never does that. If you want to take that position, okay, I would just say you haven't done it long enough. Okay.
Right.
So with that, we have to understand fasting has tremendous benefits, we should all periodically fast. Okay, absolutely. The issue we get into is simply too much of a good thing. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Yeah.
We've made fasting a club. Fasting, if there's fasting apps, fasting books, fasting groups, fasting cruises, I mean, I'm serious. I'm being sincere. There's fasting cruises. If you're like an avid faster, it's like, oh, my life is all about fasting. There are cruises that you can go on and not eat with all your other friends while being out at sea. The moment that any dietary protocol takes on a club-like status, run the F away from it. Because nutrition and diet has nothing to do with being in a club.
That is so profound. We need to make a meme out of that. That is
so let's talk about a couple things. One other hormone that we didn't talk about, but that I'm fascinated, is ghrelin. So ghrelin is a hormone that's turned on during hunger, right? It's the hunger hormone. But from an evolutionary perspective, ghrelin does some amazing things. Like A, it keeps fat in your body from being used as fuel. B, it helps the body store new fat because you're starving. The body doesn't know, oh, you're an intermittent faster club person. I didn't realize that. Okay, we're just going to let everything run the way you want it to. No, the body goes, we're going to run it the way we have known to run it for like 6 million years now. And so when you're hungry, fat oxidation shuts down, lipogenesis turns on. I mean, this is these have been studied ad infinitum. It's not debatable. It's not like, well, yeah, but when you have bulletproof coffee, then it doesn't. No, this is what ghrelin does. Talk about ghrelin a little bit too in the composition of this mechanism.
Well, I think what's interesting to understand. So ghrelin is your short-term, fast-acting post-meal hormone. And what you need is post-meal, you need ghrelin to go down. Okay. What happens post-starvation, and again, I'm just swapping words in, okay, because we're in this era where the words program our minds to think a certain way, and when we change the words, we can see.
Yes, so, yes.
What you see, what's very interesting is what you see. One of the reasons that people post weight loss, no matter what methodology they use, fasting, whatever, post fat loss, post fat reduction, you see these perturbations in ghrelin production post meal. So that the normal satiating effect you should have from a meal doesn't take place. And that is the body's starvation response. And if you think about it just from a survival perspective, there's reward points or survival points associated to post-starvation eating more. You're creating a greater likelihood of surviving. And so if you're ever confused about like what direction the body should go, just look at survival, because the body's going to do anything that favors surviving. Okay. So post-starvation, it makes a lot of sense. You see these perturbations in ghrelin, and it kind of gets knocked out of its orbit, so to speak. And so after a meal, you're kind of still hungry. Like I'm still hungry. What's going on? Well, it's a starvation response.
Right. Because the body's going, dude, you've been starving and you have more food here. Eat it. Like, we don't know what we're going to eat again. That's what the body's thinking.
And that's the crazy thing here. So today, tribalism very much reigns. And so we have not really, we have this thing, I encounter it all the time, where it's not that necessarily you're thinking about what you're hearing. It's that I've offended your tribe or your club. Okay. That's what's going on. But getting back to just kind of actually thinking about it, if you just think about it for a second, it makes a lot of sense that if you've been not having food, depriving yourself of food or not having food, the more time the body experiences over time lack of food. I'm just talking about two things. I'm talking about eating over time. so the less eating we have over time, okay, there are mechanisms in the body that begin to upregulate, downregulate, begin to change in respect to the fact that food is what keeps you alive and you're not getting any of it. And so there are mechanisms that have been in place for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And those mechanisms are much more powerful than any sort of language convention or little fad that popped up over the last 5 years that we think solves everything. They're way more powerful. So
Right.
our little fad right now of, you know, this is the answer, this does it, this solves everything. That's nice, that's cute. But it's, you've got all this programming in place, all this wiring that's here to keep you alive. And it is way more powerful than our beliefs about things. And
A lot of people who do intermittent fasting long term, and keep in mind, I have neuropathy, right? And I am not diabetic per se, but I have been fasting for way too long. I stopped fasting about 5 months ago. And I got to tell you something. I would develop the distended stomach. My stomach is going down because I'm sure I was getting visceral fat infiltration. I was getting all the symptoms that diabetics get. I'm going, what the F is going on here? And then it started to dawn. When I started doing some reading, I thought, could my overzealous approach to fasting have made me insulin resistant? And I have to tell you unequivocally, I'm confident it has. And so with that being said, there's one other thing that people who fast long, like for years, they always end up with gut problems. Well, I'm going to tell you why that is. It's ghrelin. You know why? Because ghrelin increases gut motility. When you eat a meal, food moves through your digestive tract at a certain rate and out the alimentary canal. When you have lots of ghrelin going on, your food, your stomach is literally chewing on itself. It's got nothing to digest. Ghrelin is there to help you become a glutton when you finally find food, because you're going to eat as fast as you can and it's going to move fast and you're going to be able to be this gluttonous pig and get as many calories in as possible, because the body's saying, we don't know when we're going to eat again. This guy's a horrible hunter and gatherer. Well, high levels of ghrelin make your stomach work constantly. It starts to chew on itself. It starts to eat itself. I'm being oversimplistic, but most people who have fasted for too long start to develop symptoms that they hate. It could be neuropathies, it could be sleep disorders, it could be a variety of things. But they almost always say, my gut's messed up. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't eat for 16 hours a day. And why is my gut messed up? It's because ghrelin is turned on all the time, preparing you to devour food for the next 6 hours. And that is why most people do fasting wrong. The 8 hours that they can eat, because don't forget, we've been sold books that say, oh yeah, you eat whatever you want for 8 hours. Be a glutton. It doesn't matter. That's complete bullshit.
Yeah, that's a very fascinating point. I don't think I've ever really considered that one, and that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so really, what we're talking about here is the fact that your body's designed to keep you alive, and that if you think about, just take out the words we're using, take out intermittent fasting and OMAD, and take all that out. Just stop using that. Okay, those are words that are contrivances. Just use the word starvation, and then use the word feasting. Just use those two words, and those will explain everything that's going on here. So historically speaking, there are benefits to some starvation. We see it across the animal kingdom. So you see what starvation does is it allows the body to sort of take a break. It allows it to replete certain things. It allows it to clean out the cellular trash, and there are very interesting mechanisms that kick in a starved state that basically turn the aging process off, okay? Because really aging is a function of growth, and growth is a function of insulin to a very large extent, the IIS receptor and the MAPK pathway, all these things stimulated by insulin. So in order to grow, you need food. And in order for that food to do its thing, it has to turn on all the growth pathways. Well, if the growth pathways are always just turned on, that's not such a great thing over time. There needs to be kind of a balance. There needs to be a yin to that yang. Right. And that is that periodic starvation turns on the life extension pathways, turns on MAPK, turns on SIRT1, turns on HDAC inhibition, turns on the ubiquitin proteasome pathway, turns on all these really cool things. That's great. And it seems to pause the aging process, okay? But if you just think about it from a historical perspective, constant starvation never really benefited anything, okay? Right. Like Like, show me a population that flourished under constant starvation.
Well, I want to actually save this for the other side, because this is something that you and I injected into the discussion about the keto diet a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I want to now bring it to the changes in germline, the changes in transgenerational changes that come from extreme fasting. Because we have two great examples of this, Russia and Ireland. And we're going to use them as backdrops for the further discussion when we come back from the other side. If you're young and you're planning on having children, you're married, and you're thinking, hey, me and my wife want to have kids in a few years, you need to hear this next discussion. I promise you. Joel, let's go ahead and promote something for you. So you've got some great things going on. You're doing online classes now. Where can people find you and your information?
Thank you. Yeah. So what I would say, if you're hearing this, is come to Veep Nutrition and check out the immune-centric fat loss course, which is the very first ever course that addresses a lot of the things that we're talking about, particularly the post fat loss phase, the weight reduced phase. And a lot of really cool science has shown that there are a bunch of really unique mechanisms that turn on in the weight reduced phase. And they really kind of explain why the bulk of the population, 90+%, can't keep their weight off, why they regain the weight. So it's the very first program ever that addresses that, that literally goes down the checklist and just checks them off and counters every one of those. And we've had really great success on it. Over 1,000 people.
Yeah, I see so many positive responses, even on this post right here. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Finn Mackey says, Joel has some really good information in his book, including on fasting. I never thought about the fast famine cycle in the way before. I can't wait to listen. But he's a big fan of yours. And then also I see things on your Instagram posts where people are saying, I've never been able to lose body fat, and now I can easily. Now you've unlocked this secret for them. So that's Veep, VEEP nutrition.com. We're going to take one quick commercial break. Listen for the secret word and email it to onair@superhumanradio.net with your address. Stay tuned. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Inside Tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/Delta8, that's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/BetterHelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR. Fasting.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back, and I promise we'll get to all questions that are posted. I haven't looked through them all, but we will get to them. So we did a show a few years ago about the ketogenic diet and the potential for mutations in germ lines in mothers and fathers that would influence their offspring. So I want to just set the table, and then I'll turn it over to you. Epigenetic intelligence is passed from generation to generation to prepare the next generation for what it should encounter given our current situation. So when you look at two countries that are great models to understand starvation, and that's Russia and Ireland. These are two countries that had profound and long famines, so bad that in Russia they were literally taking frozen bodies off the street and eating them because they had nothing else to eat. In Ireland, they were starved by the British to try to get them to switch over to Protestant religion. What we see transgenerationally from both of these populations is profound depression, such a high rate of depression that it's the highest in the country. And alongside that, high rates of alcoholism, which is just self-medication. If you're depressed, you're going to drink alcohol. But that's not all that happens. And we talked about this in the keto diet. So let's say two parents, they belong to the keto, the fasting cruise group. They fast all the time. They're fasting. Everything they're doing is fast. They tell all their friends about fasting. Oh, we fast. And then she gets pregnant during this period of time where they're literally imposing starvation on themselves. What potentially happens to that child when it's born?
Oh my gosh, wow. That is a really good one. When you're talking about malnutrition in pregnancy. Well,
even let's say the mother says, I give up fasting during pregnancy. But what has already been encoded into their DNA to prepare this child for an environment of lack of food?
Well, that's a really good question. So, the hardest thing I think it is for most people to understand is where's the tension point here? Because there's actually decent research showing that moderate fasting could probably confer metabolic benefits on subsequent generations, but too much, in other words, chronic starvation, looking at populations, chronic starvation, and what's going on in their offspring is not a good thing. So, and I think under that, you have a whole host of issues related to proper growth and development and things like that. And which, by the way, for those of you not familiar with what Carl's talking about, we did a show a few years ago on transgenerational epigenetics, which I would say go dig up and watch that show because that was really groundbreaking stuff. Talking about, in fact, I think one of the points we made on that show was that you can probably make a good case, like a decent argument, maybe not the world beater, but certainly a good argument that you can trace the obesity epidemic back to transgenerational epigenetics from the 50s, because it takes 4 to 5 generations to clear out from the gene pool of your descendants things that you pass on from foods in the diet.
Right.
So and that's a big topic. It's really underserved in today's marketplace to understand the impact of transgenerational epigenetics and understand that the things you're eating or the things you're not eating are making real-time changes in your DNA, and then you're passing that on to your kids, and that can be positive, that can be negative. So I think to your point, is there potentially a negative that you could pass on to your kids from excess fasting, or in other words, chronic starvation? And the answer to that is yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what would you consider excess fasting? So when we look at us historically, as before the Industrial Revolution, compartmentalized 3 meals a day because they didn't want to pay breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They just wanted to pay you for lunch. You have breakfast at home, you have dinner at home, so we're going to eat at these times, which was the first big shift in natural nutrition, in my humble opinion. But before that, people got up in the morning, they probably found food and they ate it, and they spent most of the day finding food and chewing it and eating it. What would you say a normal period of not eating would have been? Wouldn't it have been the dark hours, like because we weren't going out looking for food at night, or we would become food?
That's a really good one, man. I'm just gonna guess here. I don't know that I've ever thought about that one. And by the way, I didn't realize that about the Industrial Revolution normalizing.
It changed everything because the factories were like, we'll pay you for lunch. We're not paying you for breakfast, and not paying you for multiple meals. You get one meal, we'll pay you for. So that became breakfast, lunch on the job, dinner at home.
That's interesting. I don't want to bunny trail too much here, but something else that makes me think of is it also changed the way we sleep, because prior to that, there was a thing called second sleep, which was like when we were primarily an agrarian society, people would go to sleep very early and they'd wake up about 2 a.m, and then they would spend an hour reflecting on the day. It was just
or I actually did a show about it. So couples that had a hard time conceiving, the doctor would write, have sex after the first sleep. In other words, when you wake up in the middle of the night, do it then, and you had a higher probability of fertility.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I kind of put the two together, that it changed both sleep and the way we eat.
They would literally wake up in the middle of the night and go to a neighbor's house and have some food and then go back and sleep because the darkness was such a large period of time, depending on the season. And so, you could have 12, 13 hours of dark in a day. Right. And nobody was getting up and going out in the dark per se to go work or go hunt. Yeah. So I kind of feel like what I'm doing now is what I did back in the day when I was focused on bodybuilding. And that is, I don't eat at night. I have my last meal around 6 or 7 o'clock, and then I don't eat again until the morning. I mean, so maybe I'm getting in a 12 or 14-hour fast, maybe some nights 9 or 10. Do you think that's adequate to stimulate the beneficial effects of fasting?
Well, yeah. So that is, gosh. So let's think about this first of all. Like we all fast every day. Okay, it's called sleep. The word break fast means that you've been fasting, and so the reason that we fast, the reason everybody's jumped on the fasting bandwagon is because there are benefits that we think are associated to fasting, and we can enumerate what those benefits are. I just kind of ran through them, but it's activation of AMPK, SIRT1, HDAC inhibition, autophagy, all these benefits. Okay, well, those benefits have a rightful place in the middle of the night. So those benefits work best on a circadian rhythm. Okay, so the optimal fast is a decent night's sleep where all the benefits of fasting kick in. Okay, and you're getting all the benefits of fasting because you're not eating for an extended period. That's the idea.
Right.
Could be 8 hours, could be 10, 12 hours where you're not eating. So every day you already do that. So the other thing too is what wakes you up typically, very often, like in the ancestral world, hunger. You're just freaking hungry. And that's what wakes you up, okay? Hunger will wake you up, where being full will put you to sleep. So all that being said, the argument then for like more time fasting, well then if you look at the ancestral model for that, it would be that you wake up hungry because there's nothing to eat. And so what do you do about it? You immediately start exercising. Well, they didn't call it that. We called it just foraging or hunting, and doing something about the problem to get some food. Okay. And then as soon as you get some food, you're going to eat it. Or if you're in an agrarian culture and you wake up hungry, you're going to go eat immediately. I mean, that's the natural response to waking up hungry, is you want to eat as soon as you can. And what we see a lot today is that you see a lot of people who've been doing fasting for a long time, and they've so wrecked their natural cycle of waking up hungry that they're not hungry. They wake up, they have no hunger whatsoever, and they don't even feel hungry till 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to wake up hungry and want to eat right away.
In fact, if you look at bodybuilder types, and I just want to put this up real quick because I love Ruscala. He said evolutionary biologists show 3 meals a day was not normal in many cultures, and this is what happened during the Industrial Revolution. In fact, there's a study out there that shows if you eat the same amount of calories compartmentalized in just 3 meals a day versus several meals a day, you'll put on more fat at 3 meals a day. And that comes full circle to my comment. So there was science back in the day that talked about fed state. And when you're in a fed state, the body treats food differently. We know this is true from anything that we get in excess. There's a relationship between availability and scarcity in the body. So, for instance, if you eat 3 big pieces of salmon a week, you will absorb and store more omega-3 than if you took fish oil every single day or ate that same piece of salmon every single day, because the body goes, well, we've got a lot of omega-3. We don't have to store it all. We'll use some of it. We'll oxidize it, use it for energy. This has been shown in science. Alex Leaf wrote a great blog on my website, supremeradio.net, about this. And this is also true in idiopathic short stature, where children, they gave children the same exact total dose of 35 IUs a week of growth hormone. But one group, they gave them the exact dose every day for 7 days. And the other group, they did haphazardly. And the group that they did haphazardly saw a greater growth trajectory from the same dose. So when the body gets the same thing day in and day out, it relaxes. It goes, I'm in a world of abundance. I don't have to worry. So that's lowest stress. And I'm going to get food. I don't have to store fat. And so this is something that's lost on the fasting community. I know there are people who get ripped in fasting, right? But by and large, most people who fast are not ripped. And when you look at a bodybuilder who's down in 3%, 2% body fat, and he's eating 8 meals a day, and this has nothing to do with drugs, folks. Don't say it's the drugs, because it's not the drugs. You have to really dial in your nutrition to get to that point. This tells me that there may be some negative effects of the stress of fasting that are backfiring on us from a desire to become lean. What do you think?
Yeah, so that gets into a lot of things. It gets into stress hormones. A stress hormone I've been talking about since my book came out was FGF21, fibroblast growth factor 21, and the take on it used to be there was a fasting hormone that you make it when you're fasting, but actually you make it when you're feasting. So it's really a stress hormone. It's related to stress, okay? When the body's under stress. So when the body's under stress, like too much fasting, you make FGF21 and it helps fat oxidize, okay? But you can also get the same thing when you're eating too much food is stressful on the body. It's oxidative in nature, and so you can make FGF21 then. So you can kind of look at things like that as markers of stress. And what you see over time is, like all hormones, these things attenuate, these things change. They don't, your output of these and the sensitivity of these things don't stay the same over time. So there's a thing that I've got a course right now that I'm doing for coaches. And one of the things that we talk about in that is the first timer effect. Okay. And the thing about the first timer effect is that if it's your first time kind of jumping in the pool of something, you're going to experience incredible results with most things. Like whatever it is, it doesn't really matter what it is. It could be steroids, it could be fasting, it could be running, it could be whatever. You're going to see pretty great results. But if we just kind of like began as publicly to acknowledge there's this phenomena called the first timer effect, half the books on diet that have been written would never have been written. Because what you see a lot of is, oh, well, I discovered this diet and I did it and it was incredible and this is the answer. No, it was really just the fact that it was your first time doing it. And then what you see, though, with repeated repeated incursions into that thing, it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't work the same. It begins to not work the same over time. You get sort of an attenuation effect or a lessening of the results that you saw that first time. And, you know, that's very much true of fasting. Just anecdotally speaking, I've seen that. It's very much true. So that first time that you kind of dipped into it, wow, you know, I got ripped and felt all this energy and it was incredible and blah, 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 blah. Everything worked great. Well, it wasn't necessarily so much fasting. It's not that fasting doesn't have benefits, but a lot of that was just simply the first timer effect. You were stepping into a new pool where, you know, all the hormones and receptors and everything for that was kind of experiencing its first sort of like, you know, initiated response. But as you keep doing it more and more, you'll see that things start to blunt down a lot. And then you start to sometimes see negatives. You see things dip under the waterline. So that's absolutely kind of, you know, I've seen that happen myself. I've seen that. Like, I literally have probably over 1,000 comments of people who reported similar things. And what's also interesting to think about is it doesn't work that way with everybody. There's always going to be outliers. So some people, there are mechanisms at work here that aren't totally understood.
Yeah, Russ is saying fasting from cortisol from fasting can help break down amino acids and muscle wasting long term.
Yeah. So all that to say that, you know, there's a first timer effect with everything. And if you begin to understand and recognize the first timer effect, it really begins to account for a lot of things. Okay, it's not to say that the protocol you're doing isn't effective or work, but it's just saying that it's going to work much better that first time you do it, and don't expect that to work the same way every time. And in fact, if you do it too much, sometimes too much of anything, even a good thing, can be a bad thing. Yes. So that's very much true of fasting.
I want to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, I want to give people some solutions. So let's say you're one of us. Maybe fasting works for you. Maybe you've been doing it for a short time and you love it. Keep on rocking it. That's great. But heed some of the warnings that we're discussing here. But let's say you're like me. I've been fasting so long that it's backfired. I have gone back to 4 to 5 small meals a day, and I definitely feel more energetic and I feel better. I'm putting on muscle again. But what do I do to get my body back to normal? And can I? We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. How's that sound?
Cool.
Okay, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. I need to share with you all a revolutionary new wearable technology called Happy. Happy allows you to enjoy the effects of caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, melatonin, and muscle relaxants without actually ingesting anything. Yes, really. They figured out the unique magnetic signature of each of these molecules and recorded them. Just put the Happy on, choose the signal you want, and it starts projecting the magnetic signature of that molecule that you choose, like coffee for feeling alert. Go to happy.com/SHR. That's HAPBEE.com/SHR to learn more and unlock an $80 discount exclusively for the Superhuman Radio listeners. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. Have you been struggling to achieve results in the gym? Trouble sleeping through the night? Overwhelmed with stress or anxiety? Look no further than Infiniwell supplements. They have designed products to address specific needs like muscle growth, hormone balance, sleep, and anxiety from the first use. Infiniwell helps you live well. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell. That's BEWELL and use code SHR20 and start living well today. I want to introduce you to Tau Patch, a heavily researched patented wearable device that provides immediate and long-lasting health benefits. Tau Patch's nanocrystals convert your body heat into light of specific therapeutic frequencies that optimize your central nervous system. The health benefits of Tau Patch include relief from chronic pain, better sleep, increased focus, reduced stress, improved athletic performance, and more. Discover what it can do for you by visiting shrnetwork.biz/Tau Patch. That's TAOPATCH. Use code SHR for your superhuman discount today. Fasting. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. We're talking with Joel Greene. You can go to his website if you're tuning in late. It's veepnutrition.com, veepnutrition.com, to learn all about his great courses and his books. His books are amazing. You're not going to find anybody out there who is, the term being on the bleeding edge needs to be changed to being on the Joel Greene edge. Because Joel is on the bleeding edge of everything new. You'll hear it from somebody else months from now. They won't give Joel credit. Baby talk is being used now regularly on the internet when people are discussing oversimplification of things, Dr. Oz type dialogue. But it started with Joel. He was the first one who said we were talking baby talk. This is good. That's bad. It's everything. But yeah, Veep Nutrition, VEEP nutrition.com. So Joel, what's that?
Thank you. That is huge coming from you.
I don't say this stuff about people. I say it about you for a reason.
Well, likewise, I just want to tell, I put this on my Insta, and I'm hoping some of my followers tuned in and kind of discovered your show. And I just, I listened to your program yesterday with Jean Paul.
Eugene Tremblay, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so next level, everything you guys were talking about. And what I think was so cool about it is real knowledge is doing. That's real knowledge. It's like a Sherpa. If you really want to go somewhere, to some exotic mountain and get to the top, and there's a bunch of dudes, a bunch of Sherpas vying for your business, and you're going to pick one of them. You want the one that's actually been to the top.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of them are there. Can you get me to the top? Yes, best price. Come, let's go.
Yeah.
And then you get up the mountain and you get stuck. You want the one who's really been to the top. And there's this combination that can't be replicated, on your show of having done it along with the research. And there's a lot of people out there that will go and read a bunch of studies and summarize and come out and tell you, share their presumed expertise, but they haven't done it. When you go, what were you doing 10 years ago? What were you doing? And you go look at their instance, see what they were doing 10 years ago. They're doing something completely different. They weren't doing this, And so what your show consistently delivers is research plus doing it over very long periods. And that is a very small club.
Thank you. So let's say someone is like me and took intermittent fasting too long, too far. I always used to brag about my best leg day was after a 3-day fast. And it was. I crushed it. And Rob Wolf told me, be careful because fasting is powerful medicine. I'll never forget him telling me that. As in the things we're talking about now. So what if you're like me and fasting didn't work for you? You did it too long and it started to backfire. Can you unwind that?
Yeah. First thing is to get your normal hunger response back. So that's the first thing. Like, there's good reasons to eat in the morning. There's good research showing that breakfast eaters are consistently leaner. And there's also good reasons to have a fast in your week a couple times, but really we need an optimal mix. So the first thing is you got to get your normal hunger response back. And so what I would have someone do typically is you can get it back immediately just by the right combination of foods. Typically, like the formula basically is you need sort of insulin suppressive foods like avocado, which has a sugar in it, methylheptulose, and it sort of like works its magic on insulin. And then when you combine that with mass, so when you combine that with low energy yield, low energy density, but very high mass foods, what you'll get is a starvation response provoked. So like typically if you have a meal like that at bedtime, you can combine broccoli with avocado, throw in some cold resistant starches with that.
Right.
And then some really super lean, no fat, super lean, like tuna steak typically. Okay. What you'll notice is you'll probably wake up in the middle of the night starving. You'll probably wake up in the morning just absolutely starving. And so it's a switch, and you can turn that switch on. It really relates to the energy density of food, the mass of the food, and then suppressing insulin. So certain combinations of food will do that. That's kind of the first thing, is get your hunger response turned back on. The next thing is you've got to slowly walk yourself back into your insulin sensitivity. And it's not that hard to do. It's basically just baby stepping yourself back with titrating very small amounts of insulin sensitizing carbs over time.
Like what? What carbs are you talking about?
So fibers are really good at that. So garbanzo beans are good at that. Asparagus, very small amounts of like phenol fruits, dark phenol fruits, raspberries, blackberries, things like that. Potatoes, very small amounts. Where people get it wrong is they just hear the word, the food, and they go, I'm going to have a meal, like potatoes, but your insulin response has not come back online yet. And so what happens is you get hyperglycemia, you tank, you're like, oh, that didn't work. I felt nauseated, it felt awful.
I'm tired. Yeah, I'm going to go to sleep now.
So insulin's like a muscle. Just if you draw the analogy of running around the block, like I haven't been doing marathon running, so I'm not going to start by trying to run 3 miles. I'm just going to start by getting my joints warmed up, and I'm just going to start with a couple of days of walking, and then I'm going to do a light jog. And if you treat titrating insulin sensitizing foods back in, that will get you down that road. Now, the key to that is I would suggest alternating days between on one day working on stimulating insulin, so insulinogenic foods in general, and these are just more in the carbohydrate family of things, but titrating very small amounts. And then the next day, incretin hormone stimulating foods, so GIP, glucose insulinotropic polypeptide, GLP-1, adiponectin, foods that stimulate that. And those are more fat-centric foods, so eggs, nuts, things like that. So if you kind of oppose days where on one day you're stimulating the family of helper hormones, and then the other day you're directly going at insulin, you'll find it comes up much quicker. But again, the trick with all of this is just sort of ease your way back into it over, a few weeks to a month. And then what I've come up with that works definitely for me, and it's worked for a lot of people in the Immunity Code who read the book, was an amplified fast. And so the idea is fasting is super beneficial. We want those benefits. We don't want the downsides. So we're really looking at what's the right amount of fasting, what's the way to do it. And kind of what I came up with was kind of an every other day fast for a very short period. But the whole trick is the day before driving up very specific gut biome actors that mimic fasting. And there's very good research showing that if you just were to create an Excel sheet and draw the benefits of fasting out, and then looked at certain bacteria and looked at the same pathways, you'd see they activate the exact same pathways. Like, oh, wow. Oh, this one activates AMPK. This one turns on the sirtuins. Wow, this one turns on HDAC inhibition. It's a class 3 HDAC inhibitor. Wow, this is cool. So if you spin up production of certain bacteria the day prior to a fast, essentially you're mimicking what people did when there was nothing to eat. Okay, so when there was nothing to eat, everybody's food of first resort is like a huge juicy steak. Let's be honest. If you're starved, if we're starved, we haven't eaten in weeks, and you have a choice, you can eat some fiber, or you can have a nice big steak. I'm going to go for the big steak. Absolutely. Okay. But the food of last resort would be the other stuff. And so it turns out that there's actually a very wonderful synergy that nature has provided between foods of last resort and starvation and the production of bacteria that mimic fasting. And so the amplified fast takes into account that the right bacteria, bifidobacteria, Akkermansia, these types of bacteria can be potentiated prior to a fast. And then during a fast, it actually amplifies the effects. And I've seen it. What I've seen happen is people who normally fast, they're like, yeah, I'm good. I don't really feel hungry. Well, you can amplify all that. So you can get them on an amplified fast by hour 4. They're like, my gosh, I'm starving. What is this?
Right.
It's the signals of fasting are kicked through the roof because you amplified the bacteria prior to that. And so the trick to that,
I cheated I did. I'm being honest. So GHRP6 is a ghrelin agonist. And so first thing in the morning, when I started eating in the morning, I would just take 100 to 150 micrograms of GHRP6 first thing in the morning. And within a half hour, I was hungry. And I don't mean like ravenously, but I was like, you know what sounds good? Oatmeal. Man, I'm going to have some oatmeal and some whey protein. And that's actually what I have every morning now. Now I have some glucagon-like peptide 1 at home, but it's the native GLP-1. It's not the long-acting. It's the one that your body, would make. When would I take that if I wanted to amplify the effects of glucagon on insulin sensitivity? Would I take it before the meal, after the meal?
So, I'm not really into peptides, so you would know more than me, but just generally speaking, and by the way, I think that's a really brilliant combination. A friend of mine, Natalie Nidham, was talking about that same thing. So taking a ghrelin agonist with a GLP-1 agonist, you're going to see like all of the body's systems kick back on, like the ability to burn fat kicks back on, hunger kicks back on, all that. My only guess, and again, real knowledge is doing, so since I haven't done it, I can't say for sure. I can only hazard a guess. And I would say
before the meal with the DHRP. We have a couple questions I'd like to get to as quickly as possible. So Christine says, I'm going to synopsize that there's a guru on Instagram that says combining fasting with ice bathing during the fast is kind of the holy grail. Could you explain why this would be? And
they got that from me.
Really? Good for you.
Yeah, it's in the book. Yeah, it's in my book.
See, this is what I mean. And we actually did a show specifically about intellectual laziness because this person got that from you. I'm sure they didn't say, in Joel Greene's book, I learned this and it's great. No, they just put it out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would one-up that a little bit. So yes, fasting with being cold, but it's the time. So this is all laid out in the immunity code, by the way. It's a whole chapter on this. So basically what you want to do, there's kind of 4 or 5 things in the mix. Number 1 is the day before the fast, you want to take in those prebiotic fibers the day before the fast. Okay, so that would be your dark fruits, your raspberries, your garbanzo beans, things like that. Titrate them in small amounts. Don't go hog wild. What that's going to do is during the night, during peak activation, peak circadian activation of AMPK SIRT1, you're going to get bacterial crosstalk. It pushes those into the ceiling, pushes those through the roof. Okay, so you're going to wake up hungry. That's the time. Now you want to insert cold right in the early morning. And then along with that, you want to take small molecules. So you'd want to take berberine, which stimulates FGF21, and then a few other things with that. So I would probably look at berberine and apigenin together, maybe with resveratrol. Then you get cold, okay? And now here's the trick, the real trick, which you won't hear from said guru, is this. Getting cold basically has an effect on the gut. It expands the surface area of the gut, okay? Fasting repletes Akkermansia. So you have 2 opposing forces here. One is the cold is restoring Akkermansia. Akkermansia wants to contract the surface of the gut, okay? But at the same time, you're having this opposing force, which is freezing cold. And what that does is it wants you to eat more. So it's going to expand the surface area of the gut to get you to take in more calories, okay? And that's why people who after fasting and getting cold, they're ravenous. They're like, oh my gosh, I gotta eat, right? So you can hack that. And the way you would hack that is with single strain probiotics. So there's a couple that I would look at that will replete Akkermansia for you. So I'll get this right. One of them is BB536.
Is that a bifido? Is that a bifidobacteria?
Yeah, it's a strain. It's a key strain. So there's a couple key strains of bifido that will readily like cross-feed Akkermansia production. And so I would do those prior to the fast as well. So what you're doing is you're actually hacking that surface area of the gut expansion by.
Yeah, right. Because it's like, imagine you take your yard and you stretch all these open spots there that you could plant grass in real quick. You know.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
That's my answer. So, yeah.
Robert Thompson, I call him the patron saint of BCAAs because almost all of his questions revolve around BCAAs. But he's asking about BCAAs during fasting. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Does it break the fast? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's a lot of things to think about with that question. One of those is the curve of how things really work. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, how often have I been on BCAAs constantly? So there's a couple things that you have to look at. One is the effect of BCAAs on the gut bacteria. So you have to kind of think about the condition of your gut first. Like, is your gut in good shape? Okay. If it is, then I think that's fine. If it's not, I lay off the BCAAs because there are different protocols that like I'll take people through to replete the right bacteria in the gut. And you have to keep them off BCAAs while you're doing that because it can sort of impact the gut in a negative way.
Is that because in their free form, like acellular carbohydrates, they readily feed bad bacteria that wouldn't be present downstream where the protein is broken down on its own? You follow my thought?
Yeah. So some of the bacteria that we want to replete during the fasted phase, particularly Akkermansia, they don't like dietary protein. Okay. So think of it this way. Akkermansia is on the carnivore diet. Akkermansia is 100% protein feeder. But the way it gets its protein is through mucus secretions that are generated internally from the body. And so what happens is with protein loads in the diet, you actually favor other species doing that. So in the fasted state, fasting normally repletes Akkermansia, normally restores it. But you kind of have to be wary about basically exogenous nitrogen coming in from different sources during the fasted state. Not always. The first question would be, is your gut in good shape? Yeah. Okay, great. The next question would be like, how long have you been doing it? Like if you're really fasting a lot, I would probably kind of lean off a little bit. But if you are not, and it's just periodically something you do, then I think BCAAs during fasting are really good. I would probably actually also throw in, glutamine, definitely throw in glutamine.
The gut loves glutamine, doesn't it?
That, and it just, glutamine is so good at controlling, fat oxidation and, basic metabolic action. So glutamine together with taurine and inositol, probably like are a good combo.
So real quick, I'm going to try. I looked this up for you, Robert. Very few sumo wrestlers get it past 60 years old. So that's what happens to them long term. And that's true of, you don't see any 80-year-old, 350-pound people out there. It's just a rule that we even talk about in bodybuilding.
You were the guy that originated that, as far as I know. I don't remember hearing that until you said it, and I really thought about that. And yeah, it's 100% true.
Well, and to those of you out there of small stature who've hated yourselves because you're only 5'3" or 5'5", you're going to live longer than the rest of us. So that's the upside for you. Small people live longer. Don't ask me. There's lots of theories on why that is, but. And then the last question, I think it's a question. Craig Hollander says, I no longer follow the low-carb fasting or intermittent fasting lifestyle. I'm practicing a pro-metabolic bioenergetic approach, and the results have improved hormone levels. This is amazing since I'm not stressing my body and I'm back to glucose-based fuel sources. Fruit is my main source of carbohydrates, and my blood sugar levels have improved. So he was a faster. I remember he's talked about this in the past. Do you think that's because he's become a virgin again, so to speak, and this is his first timer kind of response because he has not been eating these foods for so long? If he continues on this path, could it start to go in a different direction?
Well, too much of anything long-term can be an issue. So we've lost the idea of seasons and seasonality and availability, so when I talk about balance is essential, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that I'm talking about the 4 food groups. And no, that's not really what balance is. Balance is over time, over seasons. So, if you think about historically, seasonality drove variability and it drove availability. So there's a season where, like, example would be the Indians where I live, here in Southern Cal. Part of their diet was whales. Like, they would actually go out on, I don't know how they did it, but they would poach like giant sea lions and whales. And so, in that season, during whale season, you probably just ate whale meat and fat and blubber for the whole thing. That's probably what you ate. But then there came another season where there wasn't any of that, and you were foraging for nuts and berries and coyotes and whatever you could get. So this idea long term is that over seasons things need to balance out. But to the low carb thing, what a lot of people don't realize, because low carb diets are so popular, low carb diets actually will drive insulin resistance over time, and they're associated with increases in all-cause mortality. So the low carb thing, it's got some very serious drawbacks if you do it too much. Conversely, what Craig is doing now, where he's back to using sort of fruit as a fuel source, there's a lot of advantages that go outside of just simple metabolic dynamics, and it gets into the way that phenols can affect gene expression and fat oxidation and things like that, and the phenols in fruits, very, very, very beneficial. And very interestingly, one of my coaches, Alexis, I think you spoke to Alexis.
Yeah, she's going to be on the show. We're doing a deep dive on DHM.
You're gonna love her. She's brilliant. She actually pointed out to me that her lab did a study on whole fruit, not fructose. So when you look at the science, fructose is villainized. Like, fructose, carbohydrate response element binding protein in the liver, blah, blah, it's the cause of everything. Oh no. Her lab produced a study that showed conclusively that it never even reaches the liver when it's in whole food sources. So fructose never even reaches the liver at all when it's part of whole food. So yeah, that explains a lot, Craig, in terms of like what's going on right now. And yeah, so.
Last comment is from Christine. She is in Germany. She says, "Thanks for explaining. Need to read your book again, Joel, to understand what you just explained. Waiting for the German version." You have any talk about translating any of your books?
Yeah, I've had a lot of requests, and I need to get on it. So if anybody is in that world, contact me. I couldn't be more stupid when it comes to that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna need some help, like an agent or someone to kind of get on that. But it needs to get done now. We're in that phase.
And then we have a new show coming up soon. That was Joel's suggestion when I had Jean Francois Tremblay on yesterday. We're going to do a show on the peptides that affect the mitochondria, how to improve mitochondrial function and biogenesis.
Man,
which is,
I
think a lot of people who suffer from what is it called? Fatigue, chronic fatigue, actually have, for a long period of time, broken a lot of their mitochondria, and that's why they have chronic fatigue. Just a thought.
I'm so geeked up for that show. I cannot wait.
We can get it done. Listen, tell Christy I said hello. And of course, have a wonderful weekend. And thank you for being here. We finally got this show done. So
likewise, you give Alyssa my love. And again, like next time you guys come out, just come on out. And
we'll plan a trip. We'll plan a trip beginning of next year just to come out and hang out with you.
Or we got to go to the Derby.
That's even better. Just come to. We got plenty of room. Just come to Louisville and come for the Derby. We'll do it.
Okay.
Let's do that. Let's plan it for next year. Assuming that COVID is gone. And all the stupid hysteria is gone, and we can actually have a Derby. Absolutely. You're invited. All right. Talk to you later, brother. Thank you to everybody who participated in this show for bringing the additional flavor of your questions. You make my job so much easier. And please share this show. You never know who you're going to help by sharing a show. And we'll see everybody next week with more Superhuman Radio. Remember, muscle is metabolic currency. So get into the gym and make a deposit today. And we'll see you later.